Hello and welcome to Monday's show with myself, Shane Davison, with Michael Purdy. You know, he's hot on league guitar today. It's been another big weekend. Reminder, we're brought to you by OurGame.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Look at that lovely Roscommon number. Look at this nice little Mayo zippy. There's plenty of zippies there as well. And as we always explain, there is a load of different ones all over the site there. So OurGame.com. How are things with you, Michael?
Good, Shane. January is nearly finished, but I believe there's a 20% discount until the end of January. So
Correct,
get in there
right.
fast. Get in there fast. And especially with the Rossies on top, maybe Mayo are back. Tip aren't back, but you can still support them.
Yeah, look, they will be back. By the way, we have a couple of coaching clinics coming up soon. This one in Kilworth, County Cork. Colm Spillane, Eddie Brennan and Owen Brislan are going to be there. Check the video description for a link to the tickets there. And we have one coming up in Derryloughlin in Tyrone as well. Conor Gilligan, Conor Gormley and another special guest will be there as well. So again, check the video description. So much went on over the weekend. But the fact that there's going to be a meeting at Croke Park tonight with delegates from Kilmacud Crokes and Watty Graham's Glen. Will we finally get a resolution on this matter?
I doubt it.
Well, certainly not a satisfactory one.
No, I don't think so. It's obviously going to be the first time, I'd imagine, that the two clubs have been in a room together. I don't even know if they've talked or had any conversations around this. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But like, all the vibes you're getting, and listen, maybe there's a potential bluff in it as well, but all the vibes you're getting from Crokes is that they're not going to play a replay. And it doesn't matter when a date is fixed, that, you know, players are gone off. Shane Walsh has gone out of the country now, and there's other different, you know, functions and events, and work obviously resumes and normal life resumes. And it looks like Crokes have moved on. They've celebrated winning All Ireland, and like, I don't think they'll be playing a replay, even if it is fixed. But with that hanging over the decision makers' heads, does that change? Like, if they do fix a replay and the title is just handed to Glen, like, it's a farcical scenario then. So I'm not sure. It's not something that's going to end anytime soon anyway. And there's going to be plenty of meetings, going to be plenty of talks, and the potential for counter appeals and different things like that. I hope it doesn't go down that road and go into the DRA where decisions have to be made and stuff like that. But I think I just can't see Crokes playing a replay. That's from everything I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm the same. I can't see it happening either. There might always just be an asterisk over this one, even though that's probably unfair to the efforts of the players on the day. There will always be those people who say, hey, but they had 16 players on the field or whatever. Smart, if you want to say that. Paul Mannion was on it too, but obviously he was clearly walking directly off the field. No resolution, no replay. I would say terrible ending to the saga, says Richard Hogan. I mean, would you like a replay? I'd love a replay, actually. I think it'd be brilliant because it could get quite testy.
It could get. You're guaranteed.
It will get.
If they play and like everyone that's supposed to be playing is available to play, it will get fairly tasty. It was tasty enough anyway, but there's bound to be a bit of needle, and that's not to say. See, and I don't like anything about this situation, because I think, regardless of what's in the rule book and setting precedent and things like that, I just think the GAA should have come out on that Sunday night or at the latest the Monday morning and just stood up and said, listen, there was a mistake made. We're going to do this. We're going to order a replay, or we're going to make a decision on it, or whatever. Like, there was no big hullabaloo around, you know, we had to go and sit on the field in 1998, but it's amazing how quickly the replay was made. Do you know what I mean?
But that's because you caused such a fuss.
Yeah, yeah, but you force someone's hand, because you can see like a total injustice. Like, that was just ridiculous.
But you do know that there's an asterisk over that All Ireland in '98. Yeah, you accept that.
That never registers with me whatsoever, because we went out and beat Clare in a game and beat them pretty comprehensively down in Thurles the last day.
What was the score though when the referee blew it up early?
Clare were up by a goal with about 5 to play, including injury time, I think, as well. And we were
You would have never made it up. You were at nothing.
We're after coming from 10 down, I think, that day. So what was another 3 at that stage?
I'm being a little mischievous. Sean O'Sullivan's driving the boot in, much like Meath in 2010. I hope all the bad luck follows them.
Now that's different.
This is the Super Club thing as well, though.
Yeah.
It's the perception of the Super Club, I think, with Crokes, that a lot of people go after them over that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's fair. That's fair either. The Meath thing is completely different. Again, that's another situation where the GA can clearly see this is not a goal. He's carried the ball over the line, and they should have dealt with it there and then. They didn't deal with it there and then. They should have dealt with it very quickly after. Unfortunately, they didn't, and now we're left in a situation where, like, will Louth ever win Leinster? Will they ever get a better chance to win Leinster in the history of the GA? Who knows? And you can't. I was, listening to various people maybe with connections to the Glen talking last week. Like maybe this was their chance as well. And maybe if they don't appeal now, they've lost their chance maybe of ever winning an All-Ireland club title. So I don't know, but it's just messy, and it's going to stay going on and on and on. And Richard Hogan just asked a question there. He says, Mick, could you ask Shane where Tip were in 98? Yeah, very well said, because they didn't compete in the Munster final that year, and they were well gone by the time any trophies were being handed out.
That whole year is a blank to me. I'm not quite sure what happened. Fergus Butler says All Ireland should be won in the field, not in the courtroom or the boardroom. Do you know, and I'm sure you would in the past looking up articles about, historical stuff to do with the GA. But if you go back like 100 years and maybe more, and just that whole first maybe 30 or 40 or 50 years of the GA, the amount of times games were results were overturned or thrown out because of what they decided afterwards based on appeals. It just seemed to be, people were constantly taking the hump over something that happened towards the end of the game. Like, this was back in the era before there was even a rope at the side of pitches. I remember I can't remember specifically who it was, but there was a story of one lad who was running down the field and got tackled by a supporter, but there was an appeal afterwards and the result was overturned. This sort of stuff used to be 10 a penny in the GA.
That's like that is some junior game, a clip a couple of years ago, where the umpire comes in and hits it at his shoulder, while he's umpiring. Do you
remember that time a physio was coming on the pitch and a player went to dunt him and the player ended up on his hole?
That's right. Yeah. Janie Mack. Yeah.
Was that in Wexford?
I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of the GA one. I'm thinking of when it happened in a rugby match before. The GA one now doesn't ring a bell now. But it is amazing, as you say, historically, when you go back through the history books, if you go back through, the list of All-Ireland finals that were played, there are a fair few asterisks, or a fair few was played 2 years after because of some controversy or whatever.
Or because of the World War.
Or, well, that's obviously, that's a very...
You make allowances.
Yeah, but I just hope... I listen, I don't know if Crokes are, still All-Ireland club champions at the end of this, I know personally, I don't really have an asterisk beside it. I have a serious question marks behind the GA and the absence of leadership and the absence of someone standing up and saying something wrong is after happening on the biggest day of the club season, and we have done nothing about it.
So did you see that thing in soccer over the weekend from Germany? Some player went running down the field. He was tackled by the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper knocked the ball over the sideline. The forward then tried to take a quick throw in, but the goalkeeper ran over the sideline, got a second ball and threw it onto the field, so that the quick throw-in couldn't be allowed to be taken because there was 2 balls on the pitch. And the guy who was about to take the throw-in was so furious with the goalie that he just picked up the ball and just fired at him.
Could see that happening. Yeah. It's just like it's the same in tennis. The odd time a ball might slip out of somebody's pocket during a play where they're in trouble, and all of a sudden it's a let and it's a replay point. I think that's smart, I have to say. I also think you can't legislate for someone's reaction to that. Like, you have to give them a bit of leeway, because like the goalkeeper's really poking the bear there now.
Yeah, that's SH1T housery. I was very pleased when I saw that. Paddy Carr, so obviously the Donegal manager, finally a man with a head of hair to rival Vernie.
He's a fair head of hair now.
Yeah.
Lockdown all over again by the looks of it.
Morning, Joe. How did Aaron McAvoy play for St. Kieran's? So he must be talking to Joe Butler, who was saying, I watched the Leinster Colleges semi-final on Clubber between St. Kieran's and Closh Owen. It appeared as if there were no pitch markings and a load of grass on the pitch, and loads of grass on the pitch. Surely not acceptable. Okay.
Cairns will play Offaly Schools. We'll probably go into it a bit more, but Cairns will play Offaly Schools in Leinster final. Offaly Schools slow enough start against Good Counsel. They were down 2-4 to 8 points. Niall Keogh got a great goal, but Offaly Schools reeled off. What was it, 1-12 to 3 points in the second half. Really strong bench. And listen, there's no point in saying it's a fairly stacked team. With 8 of that All-Ireland minor winning team from last year. Now, I believe they're not training together. They're barely training together because they're all involved with their own schools. The vast majority still are, which is obviously problematic. And they're going to face off against Cairns. And an Offaly school or a combination hasn't won it since 1986, I think, when St. Brendan's won it. So Offaly schools will be trying to book a trend there against the Leinster and All-Ireland powerhouse that St. Cairns is.
So we're going to have the Kilkenny Miners against the Offaly Miners, and how couldn't they be winning All-Ireland titles when they have such stacked teams and talent concentrated? Look, obviously they're brilliant nurseries, if you want to call them that, but I think it kind of skews things a little bit when you have such a concentration of talent from within the county. And obviously, if you go back traditionally, Kieran's important, like big names from other counties nearby as well. It's a little bit of a joke, to be fair.
Yeah, and by all accounts, the pulling power that Kieran's have is kind of like a centre of excellence in one way, really. And that's, they're probably pulling lads away from, Johnstown. They're probably pulling lads away from Kilkenny CBS. They're probably pulling some lads away from Callan as well. I suppose that's something that they've built up in the tradition of the school now, is that it has that kind of pulling power to pull away other guys. They will go on to the All-Ireland stages regardless of whether they win Leinster or not. The Offaly schools can't because they're a combination, and they changed the rules on that a few years ago. I think the 2 beaten semi-finalists, if Offaly win, will play off to go through to the All-Ireland stages. No, Burr are part of the Offaly schools, Joe. They are indeed, yeah. They're actually in the Leinster B colleges final. They beat Castlecomer last Thursday, and they only have 2 or 3, I think, on the team, including Ben Miller, my own clubmate in Burr. They're actually probably going to be playing Colossian Cormac with Adam Screeney and Brecon Kavanagh and all those lads in the Leinster B colleges final as well, because they're playing Naas, and Kilcormac will probably be favourites to win that. So I don't think it's ever even been possible for someone to play a B final and an A final in the same year. But definitely 1 or 2 of the Burr lads are going to do that, and potentially a heap of Kilcormac lads as well, which is a mad one. But I could just say, on the Offaly point of view, this is hands up, we will never be as strong as we are this year, probably again. This is just a golden kind of crop. Next year's team will not be nearly as strong, and the year after that will be probably a little bit weaker again. And it's probably good timing from our point of view that we've got into the competition at this stage with this really good crop.
Yeah, it's serious transfer mania this past week or so in the GAA. Now, maybe this is just in terms of the news coming out. A lot of these ones would have been rumbling away in the background. But Rob Henley has transferred from Brafey to Raheny. Now, I believe he's lived in Dublin for about 12 years.
Yeah.
And of course, the commute over and back is very, very punishing, I'd imagine. So I don't think there's too many complaints about that one, really. Imagine him now hitting kickouts to Brian Howard and Brian Fenton next year. Or this year, I should say.
I saw a few people giving out, because there's always people giving out. Like, it's not, I would have had dealings with Rob at various times over the last, 5 to 6 years. He's been based up here. He's been traveling over and back the whole time. I think he was married recently enough as well. There does come a time when you just can no longer do what some of those Mayo lads are doing. Chris Barrett, I think, transferred to Clontarf, definitely for a year anyway. It just does come a time. Like, imagine the furore if we transferred to Croke. But I think maybe Raheny's maybe a lot more acceptable. But people love jumping on that bandwagon of, a county player joining a club up in Dublin. Like, the concentration of the population in Ireland is in Dublin now at this stage. The concentration of employment is in Dublin. You're bound to draw people there. And like, Brafey is like, anywhere in Dublin back to around Castlebar, Brafey area is a trek. It's a trek and a half. And he probably felt he could no longer kind of do that. I'd say he'd done it for more than a decade, as you said.
Do we need to set up a few bogger clubs up in Dublin? And if you transfer up, you have to be either on the north side bogger team or the south side bogger team.
Well, you definitely didn't join the bogger team anyway, I can tell you that. Because I remember chatting to somebody that was involved with Coola before. And he said he couldn't get his head around how lads were talking about cryptocurrency in the dressing room, and he was used to talking about sheep and cattle and stuff like that.
Another transfer is two-time All-Ireland hurling winner James Barry. He's applied for transfer to Ballyporeen in football and Skeheenarinky in hurling. So he's living down the area there, obviously Upper Church, Drumban, man. And this one has definitely caught the attention of a lot of people. Jack McCarran, he's gone from Monaghan club Curran to Scottstown. And I think this is to do with the parentage rule, isn't it? So current chairman John Connolly has confirmed that they'll be challenging the decision based on the wording of the bylaw, which they feel should not apply in this case. And he says, naturally enough, for a club of our size, there's a devastation of potentially losing Jack, who has been a wonderful player for us for 22 years. And that devastation is not just in the club, it's in the community. So that one definitely is not going down well.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't know, bylaws, like within parishes, shall we say, the parish rule is a gas one. It applies in a lot of parishes around the country. Certain counties enforce it. I know Dublin don't enforce it. It had been enforced.
Kilkenny City don't.
Kilkenny City don't as well. Yeah, like it's kind of a mad one. And I'd say the parentage rule, or being able to go to the club of your mother or father, generally wouldn't apply outside of a parish. So I'd say that's maybe potentially what they're challenging there. Again, it's probably a player going to one of the bigger clubs as well, which is, maybe it doesn't look as good, shall we say.
Yeah, it's just that concentration of talent, and even taking away the competitiveness within a county championship. Remember, even a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Grode McKiernan went from Swanlabar to, was it Cavan Gales he went to? I might have the club wrong anyway, but as well, it's just that concentration of talent. Liam Silk isn't going to be available to Pádraig Joyce this season. He's a huge blow. What a very good player he is.
He's a brilliant player, and we'd obviously known from watching Corofin over the last 4 or 5 years how good he was, but at county level he was outstanding last year. He kept Sean O'Shea really quiet in the All-Ireland final last year.
You pronounced the Kerry man's name wrong there, though.
Shawnee O'Shea or Shawnee Shea.
Correct.
It's amazing, there's 3 or 4 different ways of pronouncing one name that looks pretty basic to pronounce when you look at it. Yeah. But I think Liam Silk is he's a doctor, and I think he was doing some placement down in New Zealand, I think, and I don't know if he's extending his stay or he's continuing to work down there. My brother actually lives in New Zealand, and it's completely different health system than here, I can tell you. If you want a prescription, it costs you about $5. Get your prescription and just go, whereas here you're looking at upwards of probably 60 quid just to get something written down on a bit of paper for you. But listen, that's another topic.
Do you know in a couple of years' time they're bringing in a law that cigarettes cannot be sold to anyone who is born after a certain date? So let's say, I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but let's say you were born, and anyone born after 2007 can never buy cigarettes ever. So that's their way of phasing it out. So
yeah, it's one.
They did a lot of crazy. Yeah, they did a lot of crazy things during COVID down there, a lot of reprehensible stuff, but I think that's a good one. We're going to be talking about the top 5 hurlers going into the 2023 season. So get your comments in and let us know who your top 5 are, and number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll bring them up in the comments in a little while. 2 lads who potentially could be in that are Aussie Gleeson and Desi Hutchinson. They're both going to miss the early rounds of the National Hurling League due to injury. How big of a blow?
Well, I think most importantly, you want to have them for championship, but Davey has probably shown in previous reigns he does like to generally have a good league campaign. Look at the way in Wexford. Remember how quickly things turned there, and the whole chill the beans thing, and they were down fairly low when he came in, and all of a sudden they got a couple of big league wins, and they beat Kiley's Limerick, actually, didn't they? In John Kiley's first season. I remember it was a big win. They got over them, and the swell of optimism carried into the championship. Then all of a sudden they beat Kilkenny in the championship down in Wexford, their first win against Kilkenny down there in a long time. So if he's missing a couple of those bigger names, it's definitely going to be maybe harder to do that. But they are in, probably, not to say that there's an easier division within Division 1, but Division 1B is definitely a little bit lighter, shall we say, than 1A.
Yeah, and they also beat Kilkenny and Nolan Park in the league that year as well.
Right, yeah.
So they got to the semi-final. It was the first win since the 1960s or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry as well. Remember that year, your all-conquering Tipperary beat Wexford well in the semi-final before getting annihilated by Galway in the final. and the whole year fell apart. But remember Davy came on against Tipperary that day and ran into Jason Ford that day, and basically said that it was premeditated and that he wanted to kind of jizz things up a bit or rile them up a bit, like just kind of crazy stuff. But it'd be interesting to see. We're probably going to talk about pundits leaving the punditry chair and getting back onto the sideline. He's obviously one of them, and there's plenty of them in football too.
Okay, so Richard Hogan says, speaking of Kieran's, must send condolences to the family of James Nolan, who died on Friday and whose funeral is tomorrow. Former Kilkenny hurler and a real star for his club, Clara. Rest in peace. So we'd echo those thoughts, of course. Another little bit of news: Paul Galvin won't be involved with the Kildare senior football backroom team this season. Glenn Ryan has now confirmed that he's stepped away for personal reasons. And let's see, Waterford will play their Munster Hurling Championship home games against Limerick and Clare and Thurles. Now, obviously, it's somewhat farcical that they haven't done the repair. Like, when was a game last played at Walsh Park, and should it really have been ready in time for the Munster Championship this year? But like, Thurles is a home from home for those players. Even like the Ballygunner lads would have played there loads of times as well. So does that really affect their chances? To some degree, you're bringing Limerick and Clare to a ground that's very familiar to them as well. So you probably do lose a little something.
They probably would prefer to be playing in wider open spaces. Maybe Walsh Park is a bit kind of confined, maybe, but it's a bit mad that like the Waterford ladies footballers are playing in Pilltown in Kilkenny, and the Waterford senior hurlers are going to be playing in Tipperary. It is a bit mad, and obviously I don't know what home advantages will actually work to you, how tangible it is, whether it's a point or two or whatever, but you would just think being on home soil and that familiarity would just cost you maybe a point or two and potentially in big games. Yeah,
and even having to take the extra drive, sure, it's a couple of hours drive from parts of Waterford up to Tipperary, so that's not
exactly.
Ideal. How seriously can we take the pre-season form heading into the league? I mean, look at Longford. They won the O'Byrne Cup, and then Fermanagh beat them 15 points to 8. Do we look too much in pre-season form? You probably don't at this stage. Although, if you're to look at the flip side of the coin, Tyrone conceded 3 goals against Derry in the McKenna Cup final, and then they go out and concede another 3 goals, losing to Roscommon.
See, how much can you read into pre-season? Longford probably were playing, pretty much their full team in pre-season, whereas the likes of, we'd say, even Kerry were still kind of weakened yesterday, but a lot of teams, the Dubs, shall we say, the Dubs had no familiar faces during the whole O'Byrne Cup. Then, the nucleus of their team comes back. Who have you got? You Davy Byrne, John Small, Fenton, Kilkenny, and Conn all playing. Like, it's a completely different prospect than pre-season. It's hard to know what different counties they're looking at in pre-season. I would say, from a Longford point of view, like, silverware, hasn't been plentiful in Longford. So I still think you're still getting your hands on something that's tangible, and you have won something already, even if it's in the early stages of the year. But the form is literally ripped up really a week later. If you look at, they were celebrating O'Byrne Cup success, the Saturday before last Saturday, Fermanagh, a team that there's not probably much talk about this year, gave them, had the 6 or 7 to spare at the finish, like a fairly comprehensive defeat on the away side. So O'Byrne Cup success is kind of probably quickly forgotten now at this stage, I'd say.
Yeah, so Kevin McStay getting a win, a draw the other evening. I was watching it on RT as well. It took a last-second point from Ryan O'Donoghue. And actually, there was a couple of last-second heroes over the weekend. Another one, of course, would have been Paddy McBrearty. Brilliant final point. Some people I see were saying that he should never have been able to get in untracked into that position to fire over the winner. But I just thought it was a good give and go, and he ended up popping over the shot for a finish. Were you impressed by what you saw from Mayo?
Well, I didn't think it was maybe as different as had been built up that it would be completely different, that there would be maybe a kicking game. There wouldn't be, we all know Mayo from recent years, how athletic they are, how, they carry the ball through the tackle the whole time and attacking waves or whatever. And I don't know if people were expecting that when Kevin McStay came in, there was going to be this glorious kicking game. I don't know how you expect to see that in January, really, as well. But it was much of the same from Mayo. But the same faces weren't there. And I think that was the big thing. Don't think there was any player in the starting 15 predating, 2014, when James Horn's era there, when it was, they were beaten in the final in 13, they were beaten in that semi-final replay in 14, they were beaten in 15 in the semi-final, they were beaten in the final in 16 and 17. And there was none of those players. Aidan O'Shea came off the bench, Killian O'Connor came off the bench, got a lovely score off his left, actually. But, none of those faces. It was kind of new faces. You had Colin Reap in goals. You had Bob Toohey up front making his debut, and it was quite impressed by him as well. And there was a lot of new faces on their side. And then you compare it to the Galway side, it was mostly familiar faces from a Galway side. I think it was 11 of last year's All-Ireland final winning team. Great to see Peter Cook back involved as well. Massive to have players like that. I think their biggest failure last year was probably not having maybe been able to go 18th player, the 19th player, the 20th player, being able to go really deep into your squad and having lads that can really maybe change games. And that was particularly noticeable in the final. But I just love from Kevin McStay's point of view, I just thought it was quite even innocent after in the post-match interview. Like, he didn't hide how happy he was to get a draw. There was no cliches. Maybe it's because he's coming from being a pundit and he knows maybe what's kind of wanted. But I just saw, general excitement, and even McHale Park was covered in supporters at the end of the game. And did you see the aerial shots before the game and even after the game? They were unbelievable, and it just looked like, it's probably something we'll get into, venues were wedged over the weekend. Wedged. I couldn't believe how many people I saw. I think the figure was only about 17,000 in Croke Park the other night, but I didn't probably expect even 17,000 to be there on Saturday night. But there's a big crowd there. There's a massive crowd in McHale Park and several other venues around the country. The thirst and hunger for it is definitely there. But to the original question, did I see much different in Mayo? Probably not. But we saw a lot of new personnel and maybe not relying on the old faces as much.
Yeah, TB Street said, is there an OurGame mini code for the fantasy hurling lads? There is. I tweeted it out and probably about 4 or 5 days ago. So if you can just go at Shay and Saint and scroll down, you will definitely find it there. Grodogo Grackon says, left out Jamie Malone for last second heroics. Yeah, that was a brilliant winner for Clare as well. Yeah, I looked at that Mayo team and it is so changed. It really, really is changed. And McStay is going to have to do that. Now, he probably didn't have the likes of a Lee Keegan to come up and kick scores. Owen McLaughlin came up and, he was in Lee Keegan territory and he skewed one wide at one stage. Aidan O'Mahony, he's obviously a good footballer. I'd love to see him drive forward with the ball a little bit more often. So it tends to turn backwards with it. Jordan Flynn, I think, is growing more and more into it. Ryan O'Donoghue, I think, can become... he's obviously got so much talent, but he probably does need to use the ball a little bit more smartly at times. But he is obviously a very good footballer. And Matty Ruane, what a beast he is around the middle of the field. And also, Aidan O'Shea coming off the bench, Owen McLaughlin, obviously, I've mentioned, having Killian O'Connor to come off the bench, Kevin McLaughlin. So, would you imagine those lads are going to stay on the bench and coming on? Or are we going to see them eventually push their way back into the team? I wouldn't be entirely sure to see them. I wouldn't be entirely sure if they'd start.
Yeah, kind of hard to know because I don't like using the word project, but it is a new project. How many years are if just say McStay, I think there's a 3-year contract he signed with it. There's nothing signed in the GAA. What we're saying, it's a 3-year deal or whatever. But will Aidan O'Shea still be there at the end of that term? Or, you know what I mean? I think he's trying to bring in faces now that he's going to build his kind of project around, shall we say. So I think he'll be trying to get, particularly during the league, be trying to get as many of these young guys, get as much experience as possible. I think that's why getting a draw the other day was, if they'd been beaten by a point, not to say that the balloon would have been deflated at all, but it just makes such a difference to get a point, particularly against obviously one of the strongest teams in Division 1. There's a couple of things you mentioned, Aidan O'Mahony there, that was a bit of a mismatch under that high ball.
With Matthew Tierney, yeah, ending up in his own square. Now, to be fair, I think the goalkeeper, Colin Reap, should be cleaning house there. You have a chance, you're facing the ball. I think you have to absolutely clean house. It reminded me...
I don't like keepers leaving the line, but
but it was 6 yards. It was 5 or 6 yards out.
It was the wrong side. You just need to get a touch on it, and that was a nice little mismatch I would created by Galway. From a Galway point of view as well, that ball had to be held on to at the end. Joe McQuillan's literally just waiting to blow the whistle, and probably maybe a bit of an experience. The ball is kicked away. Ryan O'Donoghue kicks it back over the bar, and they get a leveler. But I'd say they might need to be looking at, even O'Shea coming in. I was surprised. I thought, surely coming into the edge of the square and they're going to try and manufacture a couple of scores, but he was out kind of foraging out around the middle of the field. Like, I think potentially as an impact player for 15, 20 minutes or O'Shea at the edge of the square, maybe coming out the odd time, but I would like to see
him. Which square? Full back or full forward?
Full forward now, it would have been, yeah, because I don't think they have that. They don't really have a player like that with that sort of physical force. Obviously, James Carr, who we'll talk about, got like one of the goals of the season at the end of January, like, and he did something similar a few years ago when they played in that qualifier game. But that was an absolute belter of a goal, a class goal, and I loved the atmosphere even around McHale Park the other night. It was just, I don't know if it's because we've been starved of inter-county action. Like this is obviously the first weekend of the league. 6 months since competitive football game was last played, like really competitive league or championship, and there's a massive appetite there for it in McHale Park. Yeah, it was humming from start to finish the other night, and they got the perfect finale to what the vast majority of them came for, and that was a Mayo result.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to top that James Carr goal for the rest of the year. It was absolutely incredible. It's the sort of thing that people generally only try at the start of training sessions.
Yeah. And you definitely, at this time of the year as well, like, it's just not something you'd normally see at this time of the year, and players generally wouldn't try it because it's just things are difficult. Conditions are tougher. When the ground hardens, it's much easier maybe to take something like that on. But and that, I think that just energized everyone really, really early in the game.
Yeah, you mentioned there about the 3 years that McStay has and whether he'll be kind of concentrating on the younger players. Cillian O'Connor will be 31 during the summer. Aidan O'Shea will be 33. Now, they definitely still have something to offer, but it is one of those things where age-wise, they're kind of at that tricky one where you don't know, do you stick with them or do you move on from them in the GAA? I mean, in professional sports, generally now you can keep lads going till they're 36, 37 in a lot of cases because of the modern S&C and conditioning and all that kind of stuff, but not really the same in GAA when you have a full-time job as well. McStay said afterwards, we had a lot of young lads out against quite an experienced opposition, and they all stood up to their full height. No one went hiding, everyone looking for the ball, everyone trying hard to do the right thing. By the way, we've Aidan O'Mahony coming on the show in probably about 20 minutes' time. So if you have any questions for him, get them in. Maybe just throw them up as he comes on as well. Roscommon beat Tyrone 3-11 to 1-12. So as I was mentioning just a few minutes earlier, that's 6 goals conceded in their last 2 games. So you can dismiss League and McKenna Cup if you like, but there's no way that Dooher and Logan are happy with that.
No, definitely not. Really disappointing. I don't know, like, I know Roscommon were on home side, but there wasn't too many people predicting the Roscommon victory, particularly because they've been yo-yoing up and down. Like, victories have been so hard to come by for Roscommon. We'll probably go into that in a minute, but from a Tyrone point of view, yeah, and the third goal was obviously conceded when they were looking for a goal themselves at the end, but I think there was a massive impact off the bench for Roscommon. I saw Enda Smith delivering a lovely pass across, having not started for, I think it was Kieran Murtagh's goal. But Davy Burke, who we know well from this show, he'd be delighted to have 2 points on the board. Points are going to be so difficult to get. Not sure what I'll probably see is safe now in Division 1. You're probably going to need 4 to 5, I'd say, to stay safe, particularly after some of the results at the weekend, with the likes of Roscommon maybe getting a result that people didn't expect. But yeah, and I just wonder, like, is this a continuation of 2022 for Tyrone as well? And I just thought that we're going to see something completely different from them this year again. Are you placing too much stock into the league? But I think you're placing stock in the league based on what you saw in the championship last year as well, if you get me. So it does look like a bit of a continuation.
Although, to be fair, in 2021, how many goals did Kerry score against them in the league and then they ended up winning the championship? Was it something like 6 goals that day?
6, yeah.
But after the game, actually, just in terms of stats, like since 2017, Roscommon have gone up to Division 1 a few times. 3 times they've found it very difficult there. So their top flight record since then has been played 18, won 2, and drew 1. So they had been taking an awful lot of beatings up there, which is why last week when we were doing the predictions of who would go down, I was thinking maybe Roscommon would be one of those. So afterwards, Davy was, by the way, Ben O'Carroll was brilliant, scored 1-2, and just such an electric player to have inside. But Davy said 3 great team goals, but who did the first come from? 2 subs, Enda Smith and Kieran Murtaugh, 2 lads who in their heads asked, why aren't they starting? It's competition, lads. Tyrone are top side. They could have gone even more up. Peter Hart missed a couple of frees as well. It was great to see the resilience and heart of the lads, the tackling. Brilliant to see. I got a huge buzz out of it, and I hope everyone else did. Delighted with the impact the bench made. I thought David Murray was brilliant off the bench, Enda Smith and Kieran Murtaugh. The young lads too, Ben O'Carroll, Derek Craig. So all in all, have to be happy. I mean, do you remember a few years ago in the Super 8s, didn't Tyrone score 424 or something ridiculous against Roscommon?
There was massive scores put up against them, Yeah,
so Monaghan, they were beaten at home by Armagh. A sellout crowd in Castleblaney. I mean, we've been talking about the big crowds. Even go back a couple of weeks ago, Wexford were at home to Kilkenny in the Walsh Cup, and there was 12,500 there. And I know it was a new stadium being opened and the lights show and all that, but a sellout crowd in Castleblaney as well. Like, it's not as if Monaghan Armagh games are all that rare, and yet it still commands, I should say, a sellout crowd. So that's great goal.
Yeah, no, but listen, that was a trend all over the weekend. I said huge crowds everywhere. The thirst is just there for it. I don't know if you saw, like, Rory Beggan was influential, like heavily influential on play. And then he probably made it, like, it was a bit of a boo-boo for the goal. There's no point in saying any different. And Tyrone Kelly kind of read it. Tyrone Kelly, who's not long back from that suspension that he got on the back of the All-Ireland quarter-final last year as well against Galway. So he read that well. And from a Beggan,
so what way did it happen? Just for those who didn't see it, what way did it happen?
So Tyrone Kelly was standing probably around just a bit out from the edge of the D, had his hands up. There was a man in behind him that Beggan was trying to hit from the kick out. Kelly got his hands to it, took a shot, but Beggan actually got back and would be really disappointed that he didn't stop the ball going over the line, but kind of fell and something in around the line. The ball ended up going in, but like, there was one mistake, and then unfortunately for Rory Beggan, it was kind of a second mistake as well, when he probably had a chance to save the bacon. And there was obviously, they were beaten by 2 points in the end. And at the end of it, you know, at the end of the league, after 7 games, you're thinking if they've gotten a point out of it or potentially won the game, it's just, that could be the difference between, you know, being in the latter stages of the league or potentially going down to Division 2. And you see, like, how volatile the championship is as well. What is it? The 8 provincial finalists go through to the Sam Maguire, Westmeath, and the next best 7 placed in the league. So if Monaghan don't get to a provincial final and they're relegated, listen, it would be a big departure for them not to be competing in the Sam Maguire. But it just shows you, how many variables are in it. And I suppose having that link between league and championship does maybe place a bit more stock on the league as well. Even though I don't think everybody's really aware of it yet either, because it's kind of a really convoluted system that people will have to have experience before they realise, oh, that's what's going on. That's how you get here. That's how you don't get here.
Yeah, and I think we're going to end up with some really strong teams not in it, which in a way will be to the detriment of the championship, even though it will be good for the teams who are lower down the pecking order. But I think ultimately there's going to be games that are quite one-sided and people be a little bit frustrated, all told. So Armagh are going to host Mayo in round 2, while Monaghan will travel to Killarney to take on Kerry. Now, just as you mentioned the goalkeeping error for Monaghan, we might as well mention what happened with Donegal and Kerry. So we'll talk a bit more about Kerry with Aidan O'Mahony, but Darragh Moynihan ended up kind of, Donegal were trying to work the ball out from the back. There was a bit of a turnover that Darragh Moynihan forced, and then he kicked the ball into the empty net because the goalkeeper had moved off to the side looking to make himself available for possession. I think this sort of stuff will happen once in a blue moon, but it's more than worth the risk, I would say, because how many points is it worth to you in every game that you're able to bring the ball out smoothly because your goalkeeper is acting as that extra man? Because, like, otherwise, imagine if you were losing a load of kickouts and the opposition team was able to box you in and kept scoring. So I think it's worth it, all told, if you're to concede a goal every 10 games over it.
Yeah, but I definitely wouldn't be placing too much blame with Sean Patton here. Brendan McCall I don't know, he didn't have a good grasp of the ball. Moynihan kind of flicked it away from him, kicked it into an empty net. I'm kind of torn on this one. I think there are times for it, and maybe there are times kind of not to try it maybe as well. But that goal, like, really put Donegal on the back foot yesterday. They did miraculously well to turn it around. So
that's spoofing talk out of you. There's times to do it and times not to do it. Like, you have to be brave. Like, I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, As if you can somehow be selective.
No.
Nonsense.
Of course you can be selective. If you're after going short twice and you're after having both of the kickouts turned over, do you go short again? You'd be
brave.
You'd be brave. Bravery is the thin line between bravery and stupidity. I put it this way: like you'll see it happen most of the time. If a keeper goes short, even in hurling, and he's turned over, that's a goal. There's Bob hope and no hope of him going short again. A lot of the time. I just don't see it. I do think there are times to do it. There's times when a short kick out is definitely on. I put you this way, Shane. If you go short the whole time, any team worth their salt will push up and put pressure on you to go long. If you go short, then long, then the team are sitting back a small bit waiting for a long kick out, don't want to be exposed, then you can go short. If you're over any teams, which I believe you might be this year, I would definitely be thinking, this lad wants to go brave. He's going to be brave. Everything is going to be short. Everything is going to be through the eye of the needle. So we'll see about spoofery talk come the summer months.
See, you're talking more nonsense again. You'd go short so that you can bring the opposition forward, and then the long ones work. And the goalkeeper has to be smart enough to see what's always on. But you can't blame him for his teammates spilling a ball. I mean, that's
I'm not blaming him. No, I'm looking more at the Rory Beggan incident here. Like that turned the game. The disappointing part there is Beggan is a brilliant keeper, and I would always say, in this instance, to overshoot. I'd be happier to overshoot the kick out than to underkick it. He had another 20 yards behind Tyrone and Kelly. You haven't even seen that clip, so you can't even comment on it.
But you're a real captain yesterday, armed with the power of hindsight. Oh, you have to be selective. I mean, now and again it's going to go wrong no matter how selective you're being.
It will go wrong, of course it will. But at the end of a game, if you had one kick out at the end of a game, would you want a keeper? You're a point or two down, or a point up, shall we say? Would you want a keeper to be playing this kind of low percentage kick out where he's trying to go through the eye of a needle, 30 yards to a fella that could be intercepted, that could lose you the game? Like, you do need a lot of smarts. You need a keeper who's very intelligent and will read what's in front of him. Will spot when there's an opportunity to go long, and will spot when the short one is on as well.
Yeah, Chris O'Donnell, I thought, hit some lovely points for Donegal. So did Quailon McColgan. He scored 3, and there was a bit of a dispute. McColgan, sorry. But Paddy Carr, who of course was sporting your hairstyle, said after the game that Quailon is a fine young footballer and there's more to come with that lad, but it's great to see him showing the composure. He kicked a couple of points in the first half in very difficult conditions, and we were hanging on at that stage, and he got us back into it. They were kind of inspirational points. The lads that we brought in there, young Johnny McBrearty, is only on the panel a very short while. He ran himself into the ground, and you can't ask for anything more genuine than that. So to be fair, just to talk about Donegal, they're in the post-Michael Murphy era. They do need to find new players stepping up. I believe Ryan McHugh was there, possibly togged out, but I'm not sure if he played any part as well. He's obviously a huge player for them. But Paddy McBrearty, but a brilliant winner as well. And I thought in the first half, they were like 1-6 to 3 down, and you were wondering, is this going to be the start of a tough season for Donegal? But great to get the victory. Like, I looked at the size profile of the two teams, and I thought, geez, the Kerry lads look an awful lot more filled out here. Like, even Dara Roach, he played on the inside. He looked well filled out. Dara Moynihan looks more and more physical all the time. And I thought, geez, this could be a tough year for Donegal. But I think the reaction on the full-time whistle, a bit like down in McHale Park with the Mayo supporters, everyone was on the field. Maybe I was wrong, but to me, Paddy Carr seemed a bit emotional even in the post-match interview. He put his hands up when other people didn't seem to want the job. So you couldn't help but be happy for him and for Donegal, considering it feels like it's going to be that transitionary period.
Yeah, there was a very pessimistic attitude, I would have said, in Donegal around the protracted period it took to get a manager. Michael Murphy retiring, potentially some players kind of opting out as well. And when they conceded that goal and went 1-6 to 3 down, you're kind of thinking, the wheels could come off very, very early here. And they turned it around magnificently. McColgan was brilliant. Darragh O'Guil, who we probably didn't see that much of under Declan Bonner, he was brilliant at centre forward as well. And McBrearty, call a spade, McBrearty was kept really quiet by Jason Foley throughout. But when they needed somebody to step up, it was a real trademark Paddy McBrearty point, really, wasn't it? Pass, loop, and about 40 yards over the bar. Great score. And you could see how much it meant to him. He's obviously captain. He probably would have been very disappointed with his performance up until that point, and thought it was feisty enough after. We'll probably go into it with Aidan O'Mahony a bit more, but Jack O'Connor was, complaining about one of McColgan's points that he was, convinced that it wasn't over, even though I think he was on the far side of the field. And there was definitely a point that Kerry got that was very, very dodgy as well. It definitely, to me, it looked like it was curling, but it looked like it curled to the outside. And Paddy Carr said after that Kerry got enough decisions last year. So I like that. I like that bit of needle, if they play again. But like, you don't know what's been said or what's going on between managers who are in a relatively close proximity to each other as well. You've been there, been involved with teams, and I'd be the same as well. You just end up chawing with lads, like, just like someone says something and you just, obviously, like, you're going to fundamentally disagree with 50% of the calls the referee makes generally because they're not to your team. So you're just going to, and someone says something, and if someone says, sit down, Bernie, or whatever, and you'd be like, you just go, you don't know what to be going, on the sideline or what lads to be saying. But definitely a massive result. Like, if you look at the weekend, Roscommon weren't expected to win, Donegal weren't expected to win. I think Armagh even winning on away soil was a big result. There was a lot of upsets, I'd even say, this weekend.
Yeah, and do you know, the first 4 scores of this Donegal Kerry game I thought were all outrageous. So the first one was from Dara Roach, really narrow angle. He just turned and popped it over the bar. It was lovely. Then there was 2 from Donegal. I think it was possibly Chris O'Donnell. I can't remember who scored the other one. Possibly McColgan rather than McColgan. And then Paul Murphy scored a brilliant one. By the way, when McBrearty got that ball, when he received possession after doing the give and go, there was no doubt it was going over, was there?
No. And he worked the space for himself really, really well. It was the first time he got in any little pocket, I'd say, nearly the whole game. He missed a free even before that you would half expect him to get. And you were just kind of waiting for him to come to life. And it's amazing. Like, at the end of a game where he played quite poorly, like, it's amazing when you do something at the end. It really, it really only matters, like, what you do with the next ball, doesn't it? Like, the performance before that is completely forgotten from his point of view now. I'm sure he's on a high going into the next game. And Donegal need lads to step up, need leaders to step up in Murphy's absence. And even if he was quite just doing something like that was kind of Murphy-esque at the end of a game to win a game was huge. Because, as I said, like, locally, any Donegal people I've been chatting to, like, confidence or optimism were not the words that were being used heading into, this season. Now, that balloon could be burst quite quickly over the coming weeks and even during the summer. But from Paddy Carr's point of view, he's not behind the 8 ball. I'll put it this way: he would have been kind of maybe in a similar position maybe to that Colin Bonner was in Tipperary last year, had they suffered a couple of defeats. Whereas now he's kind of on the front foot, and it'd be interesting to see if they can build from that.
Talaman GA says Kerry should have nailed the last few frees. Can't be bringing up a goalie. I once had a rugby match, says Sean O'Sullivan. Had 4 or 5 people come up to me after telling everyone what a great game I had. I never touched the ball the whole game. Right, okay, I'm not sure what the context is there. But just about that disputed point for McColgan, Jack O'Connor said afterwards, Christ, the one from the umpire was fairly blatant. It's an awful decision. Everyone in the stand and everyone in that far side of the field who had a look at that knew the ball was wide. That should not be happening at this level in football in Division 1. The linesman said it was wide, yet he, the referee, Liam Devaney, did not communicate it with the umpire. That's an incredible decision in a Division 1 game. So
Jack is obviously particularly feisty because he's talked to an official, apparently, allegedly, who has said that it was wide. And if that's the case, I remember being at a match in O'Moore Park before where the linesman had seen something, but I don't know if it was in his capabilities of actually raising the attention of the referee back then 4 or 5 years ago. And the opposition manager was going absolutely mad. It was Hurler against Clough-Balacalla about 4 or 5 years ago. There's nothing worse than knowing that somebody knows that an injustice has been done, but there's been nothing done about it.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit and we'll come back to talking about Kerry once we get Aidan O'Mahony on the show. Did you see Dublin's victory over Kildare the other night? I mean, I really thought that Dublin were about to steamroller them the way they had in the Leinster Championship last year. We talked about in the preview that Kildare won the league game in Newbridge last year. There was a flag being planted in the middle of the field, the whole lot, and then they came out and were absolutely filleted in the Munster Championship. They left themselves wide open at the back. Again, that was the case for the early goal from Brian Fenton. But to be fair, they really did knuckle down and work their way back into the game. So I'm sure that'll give huge encouragement to Glenn Ryan, even though he obviously doesn't want to be losing a game.
Yeah, the way he was talking after anyway, said he wasn't really taking much from it from a moral victory point of view, but not that they could have been blown out of the water here, but I was really impressed with Dublin early on. I thought, like, if you compare the speed of the transition this year than last year was so ponderous and looked like there was no options or, you know, no real organisation to what they were doing. Whereas I thought Saturday night there was massive speed, massive intensity to what they were doing. But Kildare just really knuckled down. Derek Irwin was brilliant. Robinson up front, kicked 3.
Jack Robinson,
great scores, like really good scores. Jimmy Hyland was dangerous as well. I thought Mick O'Grady did as good a job as you could do on Con at times. Now, in saying that, Con will never probably have or miss what he missed the other night, but that might never happen again, I'd say. And God help the lads that mark him the next day and the day after that. And it was a bit of a statement from the Dubs, I'd say, too, making sure that, you know, that the 5 or 6 big players that I named, the likes of Davy Byrne, Small, Fenton, Kilkenny, even Costello and O'Callaghan, all starting that first league game. They had to get a win, but they were holding on. They were really holding on at the end. And David O'Hanlon made a couple of good saves, and I thought dealt with a couple of high balls really well too. From a Kildare point of view, obviously there's no points on the board, but there is kind of encouraging signs, shall we say. Now, encouraging signs to say that Kildare should really be pushing on and trying to get promoted back again. Obviously, Derry will have a lot to say about that, but from a Dublin point of view, rustiness in front of the post, I thought, you know, a lot of wides that are uncharacteristic of them, but this, at the end of the day, they got what they came for.
Yeah, and it was the first match of the year for them as well. Right, delighted to say we're joined now by Aidan O'Mahony, who of course is a Lake Regale coming up on TG Cahir later this week, so we're looking forward to that. Aidan, how are things with you?
Good, Shane. I'm just finished nights now and I was pulling myself out the bed, so...
How many nights in a row did you have to do there with the guards?
So I won't get too much busy now. I commute to policing in Tralee, so my nights usually finish at 4 o'clock. So we work 2 earlies and 2 nights, 12-hour shifts. But it's good. It's actually good because you get a lot of time off. So you 4 days on, 4 days off. So it works. It's a good system, all right.
Yeah, and some of that spare time will be put towards the Austin Stacks hurlers this coming season.
Crokes, Dr. Crokes.
Crokes, sorry.
They won't be too happy to hear now, Shane. So yeah, look, it's I suppose it's something new for me. I'd say a lot of heads were turned when they heard I was getting involved in hurling, but I'm actually enjoying it. I suppose the one thing when you kind of change codes and go into management is you need to start investing time in everything from, I suppose, management, number 1, but look, learning the game for me, number 2, and it is brilliant. I see the skill that's involved along with the lads, and you know, there's a great group there. You know, I suppose for us, it's about putting the work in now for the next couple of months, and look, it's all about championship. So, as I said, it's a new role for me, but it's one I'm thoroughly enjoying at the moment.
Yeah, Richard Hogan asked, how did you get involved with them? And I saw Stephen Poacher is involved with the Fermanagh Hurlers, and he was telling me he's really enjoying it as well. So, yeah, how did it end up happening?
Yeah, so I was doing the SNC with him last year. I spent a year with him, and look, I work with there's 4 or 5 guards on the team. I got to know the lads well, and they approached me, I suppose, when the championship finished this year, to see will I get involved again next year. And obviously I thought that they were looking at the SNC, but I suppose for me it was a no-brainer really. I'm living in Killarney. Look, I'm finished playing at the club now. I wasn't going to be travelling out the road to Rathmore again this year. Now I'd love to, and hopefully my wife won't be watching the show, but I'd love to be travelling back out to Rathmore for another year, but the priorities have changed a lot. So look, it's near home. It's not very time consuming, and look, for me, as I said, it's something different, so I'm actually really looking forward to it.
Did you play hurling, Aidan, at all growing up even, or is this kind of just a new departure in recent years?
I can remember last year I walked into Croke's clubhouse with the hurley in my hands, and I got some strange looks. I'd say they thought more like a weapon than a hurley, but no, I can remember actually Pat Shea was coming to our school. It's amazing really when you look back, and he used to do the football and the hurling skills. That was years and years ago to our primary school. Something I never kind of catched on to. I wish I did. I even puck around the ball with the lads there now. It's an amazing sport, but it's definitely too late for me now. I think I do more damage to myself than I wouldn't anyone on the pitch. Like, so yeah, there's there's no take up the hurling, I'm afraid.
Anyone that saw you on the football pitch definitely would probably say that the last thing you needed was another weapon in your hands.
Yeah, and it is like I'm laughing now. It's just all, I suppose, the basics and what go with it, like the size of the hurling and stuff. I'm watching lads come in there at night time, they're 6'4", 6'5", and they've like this thing like a wooden spoon inside their hand, like it's so small with them now. And it's just learning all that stuff. But as I said, so far it's been brilliant. It's been unbelievable learning it. And I think even from coaching football and managing, you learn so much from both sides. It's, for me, I suppose every day is kind of a school day with it then.
And how much of a crossover do you think there is tactically between the two codes? I mean, obviously it's the same size pitch, the same goals, same scoring system. There's no offside rule. So how much crossover is there?
There's a huge crossover. Look, I'd be very close to Donny Buckley, a man that he trained hurling teams before. Evan Talty from Clare is involved me in the background with the Crokes hurlers, and he's been brilliant just with the games and stuff. And it's very like it's no different to the games we watched yesterday. Like you're trying to defensively set up that you're not conceding or shipping big scores. I remember even with the Sigerson team last year when we were with MTU Kerry, our biggest thing when in day one was that we'd set up defensively that we wouldn't ship goals. I think we shipped 1 in 6 games. And with the hurling as well, I just think it's the movement you see in the football. And I watch a lot of the Limerick games, and I suppose their analysis and their games are being coached to this, like where you just see their movement and what they're doing off the ball and their work rate and stuff. And it's trying to implement those small things into a club team, and I suppose trying to get the numbers and get that buy-in as well.
When you see this Kerry jersey, so we're sponsored by OurGameSupporters.com, what do you think of when you see this Kerry jersey, or what player do you think?
That is smiling when your screen pop back on there now, Shane. Yeah, I think for some reason I see that jersey. It's like Liam Flaherty comes into my head or something, or he's the one man. He was number 6 for Kerry when I see that jersey. But I love that jersey. I think one of my favourites. I know there's a lot of talk about the new one yesterday. Yeah, 15. Is that my friend? Yeah. So yeah, that's that team or that generation kind of comes into my head when I see that jersey. I think it was like one of the first kind of nearly tight fit ones. But yeah, it's a class jersey in fairness. Yeah,
at the moment, look at you, there's still a little bit of give at the front here, but I don't know for how many more years it will be.
You're very well.
We're going to talk about your Laker game in a little bit, but just first of all, what did you make of Kerry? Obviously, it was a defeat to Donegal. They were 1-6-3 ahead, but for the rest of the game, then Donegal won by 10 points to 6, I think. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's early days. The one great thing about Kerry down here is we don't give you an inch too easy, even for the league. I suppose for Jack, he'd be disappointed in that it's a long trip up to Donegal. I've been there myself where, if you come away with a point or any sort of a result out of it, it shortens the journey. Look, they're down a lot of bodies. I still think yesterday, look, they shipped no goal again. It says about what way they're setting up. And I think for Jack's thing, he said it himself, it's just about staying up in the league. Getting game time, and I think that's probably the biggest thing he'd want is he wants players to put their hand up. I think our own clubman Paul Murphy again yesterday, he's been having a massive season and he's brought that form into the league and yesterday kicked 2 great points. So I think Jack won't be too worried. The home game now, Monaghan's always a tough game for Kerry. Every time we played them down through the years, they always put it up to us. So he'd be, I suppose, pinpointing that game because you need to get a result as well on the road again after that. So I just think where they'll be disappointed yesterday, they've plenty to work on. But look, they're only back a few weeks. They had their team holiday. And I know for myself, the team holiday always takes a lot out of every team. So I don't think he'll be too worried at the moment. But at the same time, he'll be looking for players to put their hand up because you're talking about panels and stuff. And you 40 lads or 45 lads inside training, they need to be showing some of the form.
Michael?
Aidan, would it have been case there's a question in there, just how does Aidan feel about Paul Murphy getting no break and going back in with Kerry? The Glen lads obviously went back, I think there was 3 of them in the other day with Derry and 2 of them played. I think Ethan Doherty and Conor Glass both played. Were you chatting to Paul? Would it be a point of view where he's just mad to try and stake a claim and that he doesn't feel like he can take time out, or what's the kind of scenario there, or is it because they're down bodies maybe?
Yeah, I think Jack had his answer from before. He could even, I'd say, give his all. He said he was on his honeymoon for a month, so he had a month's break. So I knew then straight away that Paul was going to go straight back in. No, I think he'd be very happy going straight back in because, last year he was coming on as an impact sub, and in fairness to him, every time he did come on, he did make an impact. And I think his form has gone up from the county championship to the club championship with us. And I think, like every player, this time of the year, you're selfish. You want to be on the team. You want to get that jersey. And look, it's Jack's form that if you come in day one and you put your hand up, you keep the jersey. So I think Paul is happy enough to be inside there playing well and have his hand on that one of those jerseys at the moment. And I think going forward, if he keeps the form he's in, I could definitely see him starting this year. And look, he's a huge player. He's never let his club down either. And that competition when lads come back is fierce. So I think the break, the 4 weeks he had in his honeymoon probably did him good. And he's fresh now, but as I said, he's playing unbelievable football.
Just what you mentioned, Ed, it's a completely different scenario for Kerry in the league this year, realistically. Is it all about just unearthing more players, getting more game time for lads, and hopefully being able to go deeper into the squad come championship? I don't think the idea of getting silver or anything, it's really more about survival this year and finding out more about your squad and then easing, we'll say, the Cliffords and a few lads back into it towards the end of the league.
Yeah, and I think that's what Jack wants. I think Jack would love if some of the forwards would say put their hand up now yesterday, and it was like Clifford's looking in and stuff, saying, geez, they're playing well and eager to come back, because I think that's the one thing you always want with the team. You want players to want to come back into it. Look, the forwards, I think this year will there be much of a change. You still have Shawnee, you still have Paddy, you still have David, Paul Gainey, Stephen O'Brien. All these guys have to come back in as well. But I think around the middle, look, David Moran is going to be a huge loss, just what he brings in terms of leadership and his all-round game. I was actually surprised. I thought he'd stay on for another year. But look, that's David, he goes out at the top. And he's a huge loss from. So midfield is another one where Jack will be hoping that someone will come along. I know our own Mark Ryan went in, I'd say the week after championship as well, and he's another big option for him. But look, the league is about blooding new players, but at the same time, you need to stay up in Division 1. He'll be conscious of that and hoping that he'll find 2 or 3 new players that he can bring. I know Mike Breen is back, Pa Warren did well yesterday. So look, it's not all doom and gloom. Obviously, want to get a result up there, but I still think they'll be happy enough.
So, obviously, you've gone out at the top with your club, Rathmore. Brilliant to win an All-Ireland club title there. And I suppose you can retire more easily knowing that you've gone out with that. What was the feeling like in the dressing room afterwards when you were around there with all the players and you were just kind of drinking it in?
It was, I was actually more nervous for this All-Ireland, I'd say, and I was an even on my own, because I think it's with the club, and everyone says it's, you just want them to experience that whole euphoria of winning. I can remember we all came in at half time and the dressing room was, I won't say it was flat, but I wouldn't be one for speaking, especially I suppose when you're not constantly getting game time and you're conscious as well as you're one of the old lads inside the dressing room that sometimes it's better off from Paul or Shane's talk. But I just found that day I had to talk. I can remember just saying to the lads, I said, look, whatever I think about losing, I said, going down the road to community and not getting over the line would kill our club and our community, because when you get to finals, it's about winning. And then just seeing it after, experiencing the lads and the kids and just the families, all around. And even that night and the following day, we went to the Boar's Head to Hugh, and it was like tradition. I was talking to Hugh on the Sunday night, and I was saying, for years we'd be there on the Monday, look at the clubs above, and they're above inside the Boar's Head, and the tradition of winning the All-Irelands. And here we are now heading down the Lewis, and just a trip home, getting absolutely pelted with snowballs and stuff like that. It was as good a welcome as you'll ever get. And those 2 nights were very special, but it was huge for the club, because even as you were saying, after you're seeing a panel of 42 players and just looking around inside in Crow Park and having that experience of doing the warm-up under the stand and running out then in the Fossa team where, they line both sides. It was a massive gesture from them, and we met them on the Wednesday night then in Killarney in the Shire, and you'll have that connection with that club forevermore, between Rathmore and Fossa. So it just worked out perfectly. It was just one of those days that we got over the line, and it's brilliant for the club. But like that now, County League will be starting, or the Super League as they call it down here, will be starting. There's another one of those leagues. We'll be starting in 2 weeks, and to be back to normality again then from.
Can you paint the picture of being on that, I suppose, trailer, and then the snowballs start coming in at you? How did it even happen, do you know?
So we got up in the back of the lorry, and all I heard first was some fella got a right belter into the side of the jaw once. And then I started laughing. There was one or two coming, but it was friends of the lads that were on the left hand side of us there. Like, but it was funny, and to record it was even better. But it was all in good spirit, in fairness.
Yeah, it was, to be fair. Tell us about your Laker Gale and filming that. What was the experience like, and was there any part that was particularly challenging from your point of view?
It was lovely to be asked. You know, when you get asked first, I'm always one of these people that say, "Why did I say I do that?" And then I do it, and I kind of say, "You know, it's not so bad." But there was a lot of work into it. As in, for me, I suppose you have to relive everything again. It's no different to writing the book that time. There's obviously moments in your career that you go back over again and you relive them, and they're tough. And but then there's parts as well, like where you're growing up in school and the farming and all these things. And you know, we did a day of recording back in Annie's in Gilfest where our farm is, and actually coincidentally my brother was there the same day. They were dosing the sheep. Now I went in and I haven't seen sheep now in a long time, so I was there with a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. You'd be saying he's the last fella now to be inside dosing sheep. But yeah, which is special. Like, and you know, even the last couple of days there now, I suppose all the farmers around that area are ringing my brother saying, when is the documentary on there, and will they be showing the flesh? So just things like that, Shane, are kind of special. And then look, obviously the 2010 thing is a tough, because you're reliving it in those moments that led up to it as well. Like, and but it's good. Like, I suppose for me, you know, I'll always say, like, you write a book, and I don't know, do a lot of people read books, but when it's on a documentary and you're doing Lake Regale, it's there for people to see, and they probably get to see a different side of the football.
Yeah, Michael?
You probably had to lay yourself bare somewhat, Aidan, do you? Like, you kind of, it's an open book, like, and everything is on the table there, and you have to just be maybe outrageously honest about things maybe that you haven't talked about in a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's what the show does as well. Like, I know when they came down day one, like, as you say, when you write a book, they know everything about you, so you can't be kind of saying, will you vote X, Y, and Z? But you become very open. And it is emotional. I think they have a good studio down there, just fine and dark as well. So it's you just lay it out bare. For me, that I think it's important as well. Like, I always say that, like, for years there, I used to be starting with community police, and you begin to schools and you be talking about, you be talking to young people, and they're looking down at you saying, "Ash, it's easy for him. He's won so many amount of All-Ireland medals." And I found back then, like, that, you know, I was never kind of opening up about the real person, where now I can. You know, I've had plenty of challenges in my life, and they're all laid out there in Lake Regale. And I think it's just for people to see, because sometimes when you play a sport at a high level or a elite level, you're just seen as a sports player and not the person. And I've seen that side. I've seen the side where I thought that everything about me was GAA, and that, you know, it gave me that profile, which it did. And then walking away from it, it was like the end of the world, and how would I come back from it? But all those steps kind of, I suppose, made me the person I am today, and made me why I'm involved with Dr. Crokes and this thing. Like, I love the hurling or the football, or the coaching management side of it. And you can actually relate, I think, better. And it's not because I've gone through that, but I think you can relate better to people as well. And especially in coaching terms, where you're not going with the stick approach, but you can kind of see people for what they are at face value, and know that there's bigger things outside of sport and outside of life as well.
Kieran Donaghy I just listened to some of the clips. He just said that during your tough times, he said he wasn't maybe the best teammate, because he was thinking about winning maybe more than anything else. Do you think that's something that's probably changed even within the GAA now, where we're a lot more open to, you know, what's going on in someone's life outside of the white lines, and how important it is? And a lot of the great managers will make sure that lads are thriving off the pitch to make sure they thrive on it. But Kieran kind of made a comment that he reckoned he wasn't a great teammate, and I'm sure that's not true. But do you think that's changed in the last decade or so?
Yeah, that's Kieran. Kieran's as honest as days long. Look, Kieran and myself, be very close. No, like, I think back then it was just different. It was all about the game. It was all about football. You know, for me, I suppose I was very good at keeping it in as well, so they wouldn't know that much about it. And I wouldn't expect, you know what I mean? I know Kieran said that, but no, I wouldn't look that way at all. I think nowadays, sports psychology has brought it to a different level, where, like, I know now that they do things with teams where they put groups in threes and fours, and they get to know each other, and they talk about their hardship and their, heroes and all these things, like, and players become more open. And it's a difficult scenario because some players have tougher things than others and they're hard to share them. But when you share them, then you actually get to know the player. And I think teams do an awful lot of it now, where take away the pitch side, the whole psychology side of it is huge. You know, it's massive, because when players go through, we'll say, certain obstacles or challenges, you need someone to be able to unearth or to actually be able to tease it out with you. Where I think back in our time, look, for me, it was my own fault, because I found that the player I was and the player that played in the age, that I needed to be seen like that, you know, and if I dropped my barrier, then it would be seen by me as a weakness, not by someone else, but by me. And that was my mindset back then. Where now I'd be more open and honest, kind of a person, probably maybe too much, but look, it kind of goes full circle, as they say.
And look, obviously a lot of the hard time is down to, you know, you were later cleared, but at the time failed the test for salbutamol. Like, and being a guard as well out on the street, like, you probably would have had smart comments off people because you would have been very recognisable.
Well, there was plenty of smart comments between the between the inhaler and I suppose the diving. The diving thing probably started off where, you know, when I found the asthma or the inhaler case came along, then I said sympathy was definitely in short supply. And I just think the way it just snowballed, you know, it was kind of guilty before proven innocent at all. And it just took a leaf of its own. Like, as in, I remember going up to the All Blacks Munster game, and as they said, being above in Limerick, and then next it comes on the news, like a GAA player fails drug test, and everyone's looking around, look at you, and like you want the ground to swallow you up. And it's very hard then to explain to someone about being asthmatic and explain the whole process and how it happened and this and that. And yeah, but look, it weren't even that, Shane. Like, I even found the years coming up to that, my head wasn't in a great space, and like, even walking away from sport, then I wasn't enjoying it. You know, in 2009, I wasn't starting. I wasn't enjoying my football. I think it was more outside of the game than the game itself, and all these things happened, and I wasn't dealing with them. And you know, I just, for when you've someone that's in that kind of mindset, then that can be one thing. Like, I remember going out and socialising after games and didn't enjoy it, but like more or less did it to kind of, I suppose, put more hardship on myself. And as I said, the 4 or 5 days leading up to Ashari and going in there were probably the blackest days of my life, where, you know, nothing in life kind of interested me, or I found nothing good in life. And at a stage then where you're saying you football that gave you a profile, that you cut that loose and that's gone, and you're kind of looking around and saying everything else, it's just, you, like, as I said, I could have gone down just a dark path and just given up on everything. But as I said, I have a supportive family, and you know, they invested a lot of time in me, and like those weeks inside Nashari were the best of my life, because it weren't even the GA thing. It was like something that was kind of suffering in silence, and, you know, not dealing with things, and then being able to go in and start opening up and coming out in, like, it was like a breath of fresh air. And it was kind of funny because Rathmore were actually came out on the Friday, and Rathmore were playing Championship on the Sunday, and said it was a bigger crowd. Then they were there for, I'd say, seeing what was going to come out more than what was actually going to play football. But I trained for the 2 months up there as well. So yeah, it was an interesting time. It's a time I always look back on. And yeah, look, we all have our, I suppose, crosses and paths we carry in life, and that was my one.
So in terms of the challenges that you were facing at the time, psychologically, I suppose, like, were you at a stage where, you know, when you're talking about nothing interesting you, where you were numb to everything, or were you a bit self-destructive, or how would you describe the state that you were in?
I think a bit of both, Shane. Yeah, I think like, self-destructive is like, I had no interest in anything, and as I said, like, you'll go out and you're in the middle of the league and you're socialising, and, you know, you're finding no enjoyment. I found, like, when I was going out, I was nearly crying every night, just your emotions coming up, and then the other side of it was just like giving up in football. As I said, I was going to work, and I'd say people could see it. I was just in a dark spot, and I just don't know where it would have gone. Genuinely, I just needed help, and for me, I was one of those people that, as I said, because I suppose I played like that in a team, and you're a GA player, you couldn't be seen, I suppose, dropping your guard or having that weakness where I have to come back out. So my weakness was myself, and everything else that was around it. And look, it just changed a lot of things.
And could you tell us a bit more about Ash Irie and just the tipping point for you to go there?
Yeah, the tipping point was like, look, I needed a lot of counselling. I needed like to kind of unearth what was going on in my life. And when I went in there then, look, a lot of therapy. Look, it's therapeutic. Every day there's no mobile phones, there's no contact with the outside world, which is great. It kind of opens up your eyes to life. And for me, I think the biggest thing was that every time I go to bed at night time at 10 o'clock, I'd actually sleep. And I know it's a kind of a silly thing to say, but your mind would just switch off straight away and you'd sleep for the whole night without waking or thinking about anything, because I suppose as people were always constantly thinking we're going to bed and looking at phones and stuff like that. But for me back then, it was amazing just to be able to go to bed and just switch off. And, like that's what I found the 6-7 weeks. It was just therapeutic. You talk about everything in your life from growing up to everything you've dealt with. And then there's a kind of a ceremony the last day where you burn everything and you go out the gate and you look forward to, I suppose, to new beginnings. And that was a lot of it. And as I said that time, I just needed to that step away just to find myself again.
Aidan, going back into normal life, is that difficult when, your phones and people and everything are back in your face kind of again? What was that like? What was the adapting to that like?
I don't know. I'd say when I came out, they'd be half afraid of you, I'd say, what was coming back out. So really no, I think you can deal with things a lot better. Like when you do come out, you're a lot more open to people, and I suppose it's more awkward for them then because they're kind of dancing around the subject of it. So it's kind of interesting that side. But look, as I said, it's part of my life, and it was part of my life, and it probably made me a person and helped me an awful lot. And I think, as I said, when you go into management and coaching and stuff like that, I think players are more open to you because they've seen what you've been through as well.
And are there any lessons or habits that you picked up in Asha Reader to carry to this day? Like you talk about, we all have this dependence on the phone, for example, and switching that off.
Yeah, like it's a one big keep it in the day. Like I'm a big thing about that. About sometimes we're always looking down the line. Like I'm always saying to people, and they're doing the SSC and stuff there about goals and stuff. I'm always saying like day by day it's the easiest kind of way of doing things. There's no point putting off or trying to sort out things that are down the line. Just keep it in the day, and I try to do that as much as I can now. But like there's a lot of things I suppose you can look back on and reflect on that you take away from it. And but at the same time, you're not like you can't come out and think you can fix everyone else. It doesn't work like that. You have to be, I suppose, it has to be about you. And you can only control yourself, where you can't be going around and saying, right, I'll fix Shane or this and that. It doesn't work that way.
I'm just thinking then towards the latter end of your career, it must have been very rewarding, that day in 2014 when you were sent out to man-mark Michael Murphy. And I remember the day I had to do a piece for the Star, and it was to see how would the two number 14s go, Donaghy and Murphy. And I'd say you got on the ball an awful lot more than Murphy, even though you were man marking him. So from a personal point of view, that must have been very satisfying.
Yeah, and there was, and like when I wrote the book that time, I spoke when my dad passed away in 2012, and I made a promise to him that I would get back up the steps of the Hogan before I retired. And obviously I knew 2014 was going to be one of those years where I wasn't going to get too many more options or opportunities. And that final, look, I suppose as a man marker and as a defender, all my career, I love that job of man marking. And when it gets to big days in as well, like I was 34 years of age, but the body was in great shape. I had missed training all year. I felt good, and just get out in that final out, Mighty Murphy. I'm always saying he's not one of those guys you can mark. You can do your best on him. He probably coming out the pitch for some of the time suited me as well. I got on more ball. I'm always saying that to lads. I said your first job always as a defender is man mark your man. And I said when games open up, then you'll actually surprisingly get on more ball. But for me that day, look, it was the overall team. I think we'd been written off all year. The whole 2 games against Mayo, below in Limerick, which they were special moments. People coming on the pitch and whatnot, and just those games were unreal. The All-Ireland final was gas because, like, the last phone call I had to my dad was coming down from the Mayo Donegal 2012 final, and he was speaking about Michael Murphy on the train, Aidan O'Shea, and lo and behold, I marked Aidan O'Shea in the semi-final in the first game, and then I went down to mark Michael Murphy in the final in the second game. So I'm always, I suppose the big thing, Kerry, we believe in Pishogs and stuff like that. So it just happened to work out that way. And look, we got over the line. The bus to the post saved us in the finish from probably a replay. So, but we'll take it. You need a bit of luck in games.
Is there any, like, if you were to think of all the characters that you shared the dressing room with in Kerry, in the county team specifically, who would you say is the most crack?
Who would I say is the most crack? Jesus Christ, there was some characters in our groups, like the Shays, were they just a mischief about them, you know, between ringing people, and I said Jarrow Shays one ringing Darren Sullivan there, pretending I don't know, was it the media or something, but the three of them together were they were notorious, and nobody was safe for them. But yeah, we'd like Seamus Minan, you know, I suppose if you were out and stuff, brilliant character. All these guys, Donaghy's well able, Barry John, Galvin, they were all great characters. And I always loved that about them, in that where when you went on the pitch, when you trained and when you played in games, it was like you'd flick a switch and that seriousness came out in them, because no different to yourself now, Shane, with that Kerry jersey, you know, back there. When you put that cloth on you, it just it changes your personality when you go across that white line. But when we were training and stuff, they always had the crack and stuff, and we knew when you could have the crack, and then you knew when it got serious. But those lads, they were great for me, because when you come in as a young lad and you're inside in the dressing room, you're looking at the Shays and Seamus Mine and all these guys, and then you're seeing the other side to them. You know, it's brilliant for every player, because it makes you part of that group. Then, but to answer the question, the Shays will be up there with the boldest of them.
And would there be any particular stories from, I don't know, maybe a team holiday or anything like that would stick out for you as being particularly fun?
No, I just like the holidays. I stopped going to holidays in the last couple of years. I always found that, you know, that the off season was important for me when I was getting older, so I left the holidays off. But like in terms, it was just the stuff they were at, training and things like that, and the WhatsApp groups. And like, I suppose when we started out first, there wasn't really a WhatsApp group, but I can see where they get it from. Like when I went in first, like Paddy was my first manager and John O'Keefe was training us at the time, and I'm like the lads that tell you about the train that time, like it was mentally to test players. And I went in the first night, and obviously you're eager and you want to impress. And Eddie the Tatler rang me and said, like, you need to be out the front of the runs now tonight. And I was going, and I was playing with CIT, and I said, right, I'm going to show these lads now. Very naive, obviously. And we did first 8 runs in the small pitch and up the hill, down. And I was fine halfway through. Then we did 8 more. I was falling back into the middle of the pack. And then the third 8, I was hanging on for dear life, and I came off the hill at one stage, and Paddy was standing there, and I was rubbing the back of my leg. Now I was 23 years of age. I didn't know my hamstring from my quad, and I came off. He said, "You all right?" I said, "I'm after pulling my hamstring." I didn't clue Shane what my hamstring was, and he said, "Right, go on into the dressing room." That was Tuesday night. Then Thursday night, I came back in, bag on my shoulder, ready for action again, and Paddy waited outside the door. See, obviously didn't register with me, and he was there like, "How's the hamstring?" I said, "Good. Like, you don't pull the hamstring in 6 weeks." But yeah, he said, "I'd say it weren't your hamstring." He said, "I'd say you blew the head gasket." And just poured laughing into my face, and I just started laughing. And I always think of him since, because the lads have the same wit about him, because only he'd get away with it just the way he said it to me. He was right serious, and just roaring laughing. I'd say you blew the head gasket. And he was right. I did more than blew the head gasket. I'd say everything. My mind was blown, I'd say, from the running, but those times they actually was like set you up in life for that training and stuff, mentally, and everything was, oh my god, yeah.
No doubt. We won't keep you too much longer, but just a final question, Aidan. In terms of the Laochra Gael coming this week, are you nervous about the reception on it, or are you just like, I presume you've seen it and you're like, what will be, will be?
I was talking to Noel O'Leary during the week. I myself, Noel would be very close. He's a guy I really admire. We've kept in contact since our playing days, and we've had challenge games together. And I was saying to him, I'd say I'd be hiding behind the couch with one eye open. He was laughing. He was saying, I'd say I'd be the same. You are, like, you're definitely nervous. I was saying, definitely got the short straw, because they put Joe Canning first, and how would you follow? I'm not going to be kicking from the sideline or. So I was kind of putting 2 and 2 together, saying, Jesus, why did they put me after this fella now, of all people? But yeah, look, you'll be looking forward to it and nervous at the same time, and look, you just hope it comes across well. You know, because I suppose for anyone, it's a lovely thing to get asked for. I remember I was talking to Kieran Donaghy about that time when they rang me first, and it's a great show. I watched them myself. I just think they're very good in getting, I suppose, into the analysis of a person instead of the player. And I think it's a great show to watch as well. And look, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, my kids are in it as well. Like, so, it's something nice to have down the line.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, Aidan, really appreciate you coming on the show, and best of luck. Hope it goes down really well.
Cheers. Thanks, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, Aidan.
Do you know, actually, one of the most memorable lines that I can think of off the top of my head from a Laker Gael is at the end of Lara Corbett's one. He was talking about how he keeps a small kind of circle of friends, and then he kind of finished it off by saying, "I only need 6 lads to carry the coffin."
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, they had a great one at the end of Johnny Pilkington's as well. It was just like, how would you like to be remembered? And he just goes, just Johnny. And it was just like, I just thought they'd do, I think since they went to the hour, you can really delve into somebody's, upbringing and that. I think half an hour, like trying to cram Joe Canning's career into half an hour between. Yeah.
I felt it just became a little formulaic with the half an hour. Like, I think they're brilliant now with the hour, but just it was almost like you obviously have to run through the career path. So there's only so much you can fit around it. So that's why I thought it was a bit formulaic. Another one, Tony Keady's one, of course, sadly passed away a few years ago. His was, he was asked, well, how would you like to be remembered? And he was like, Tony Keady should have played in '89. That should have been on his tombstone.
I remember that. Yeah, that was a great line. Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to do the top 5 hurlers in the country, and this is going to be pandemonium. As ever, we don't talk about it beforehand. We don't try and sort of tee each other up to make it nice and quick. I presume you're expecting that we'll be all over the shop with this.
Yeah, pretty much. The one question I'd ask straight away is, right, so Dermot Burns was Hurler of the Year in 2022. But will not be playing the opening rounds of the league with Limerick in 2023. So while he was the best hurler in 2022, is this like, with a view to 2023? Like, if he's not going to play the opening rounds of the league, are we really going to see him at his best in the league as well? So I'm wondering, like, is it as simple as having him up there, or like, you know what I mean? It's a difficult kind of a question, I think, that we kind of have to answer.
Well, do you remember last year when we Cian Lynch was the best hurler in the country, but at the start of 2022 he was carrying an injury, so we kind of agreed that it was going to be tough to have him at number 1.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he's not there, it does kind of take away from a little bit. Like, he's definitely up there in the top hurlers in the country, but yeah, is there anyone that you're thinking they absolutely have to be in this list? Gearóid Hegarty.
Gearóid Hegarty, and to be honest with you, if I'm thinking about it's one thing having to be in the list. I probably nearly have him up at the very top of it, nearly. If not 1, probably 2. And just because he's going to be playing throughout the league as well, is the last performance we saw him give in a Limerick shirt. He scored 1-5 in an All-Ireland final, delivering one of the greatest final displays of all time. So he's definitely right up there for me. And if you're looking at, obviously, Cian Lynch is on the comeback trail as well. He didn't really play in 2022 for Limerick, bar a couple of games here or there, and played very, very little championship and didn't tog out for the All-Ireland final. So I'm not sure if we can have him in the top 5 realistically.
I think we both know he's right up there, but yeah, I don't think we can have him in there just now. No doubt he'll fly up this. Okay, so who else goes in here? We'll have Gearóid Hegarty in at number 1 at the moment. Look, we've room to change our minds here if we like, but right now we're happy to. So I'll put Callan in at number 2, yes?
just quickly, if you go,
the greatest modern goal scorer in hurling.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's also coming back from a serious injury as well and played no championship last year. So I think the top 5 might be a big departure to put him in the top 5. What other Limerick players deserve to be in the conversation here? Burns obviously deserves to be in the conversation. I'd say probably Sean Finn as well. Aaron Gillan, based on form, deserves to be in the conversation too. Outside of that, who else are we thinking?
Hannon's pretty good. I mean, Flash here says Dermot Burns 1, Nash 2, Hegarty 3, TJ Reid 4, Owen Kelly 5, and a fit Cian Lynch would more than likely be number 1. Michael Nolan says Cian Lynch 1, Tony Kelly 2, Owen Cody 3, Gearóid Hegarty 4, Fionn Mackesy number 5. So I'm presuming this is a Kerry man. Joe Butler said one would also have Adrian Mullen in the top 5. Owen Cody also needs consideration. And David, who isn't given a surname, says Tony Kelly 1, Cian Lynch, Gearóid Hegarty, Oisín Mullen and Diarmaid Byrnes. Oisin Mullen, who's now playing in the AFL, the Mayo man, who I don't know if he's ever picked up a hurley. So,
he might have been thinking of Adrian there, I'd say. I would definitely have Adrian Mullen in this conversation, I'd have to say. If I'm looking at Kilkenny,
would you have ahead of TJ Reid?
I would going into 2023, yeah. I would realistically, because I think with Mullen, you're looking at a player that can, like, he's hitting crazy heights. And I know he missed the club final. He's hitting crazy heights. And yeah, like, I think he could become Kilkenny's most important player. Like, he was probably one of their most important players last year and was in the Hurler Debate conversation maybe before the final. I think he scored 3 points in the final, but was still relatively quiet by his standards. If we're looking at a Kilkenny player in there, I would probably have Adrian Mullen in that conversation.
And, you know, so would I as well. But I'm still not entirely sure if that puts him in the top 5. So is there anyone else from the Limerick side of things where you're like, they definitely have to go in? Like, Cian Lynch would 100% be in here if he was fit and we saw a run of games. But just right now...
Diarmaid Byrnes has to be in the top 5. I suppose what I was talking about was I just couldn't have him at number 1 going into 2023. I'd probably have him in around 3 or 4, probably. Yeah, 3 or 4, I would say. That's just off the top of my head.
Okay, well, we'll throw him in there in a second. First, we'll decide who's number 2. Well, like, are we still going with Tony Kelly?
All-Ireland semi-final aside last year, obviously had a brilliant year. We won't tie ourselves down to 2, 3 or 4. Like, outside of Kelly, is there any other Clare player in the top 5 conversation?
No. I mean, Shane O'Donnell was brilliant last year. I would have said the best player. Davy Fitzgerald good at times. I thought Ryan Malone was excellent and probably should have gotten All-Star. Sorry, not
Ryan Taylor.
Ryan Taylor. I'm mixing him up with my cooler clubmate, Ryan Malone. I always mix up those surnames for whatever reason. Kyle Hayes, last year, outstanding in the final and semi-final. Do you know what? He's probably not far off the mark here either.
No, Hayes definitely deserves to be in that conversation too. And the flexibility. Like, where did he play this year? I suppose it depends on who.
Well, full forward at times, centre forward. Oh, sorry, where will he play this coming year? Yeah,
like I think his best position is wing back, and I think they have the most formidable half back in the country when he's half back. But I don't know if they're going to be able to afford to play him half back. And it'll depend on who's available, who's not available, in injury wise and things like that as well. But his, of the 3 Limerick fellas, and based on last year's form, I would have Hayes in the top 5 as well.
Look, Diarmaid Byrnes is reigning Hurler of the year, but if you were to give me the option of one of the 2 to be in the half-backs next year, you can't really leave Freeze out of it, and that adds a lot to Byrnes as well. But, like, if you were to just go with open play and I had a choice between the 2, I'd probably go with Hayes. He's a brilliant defender as well, and obviously he's devastating going the other way. So I'd nearly have Kyle Hayes in this top 5.
I would have been top 5, but I probably wouldn't be pushing Byrnes out of top 5 either, to be fair.
Okay, well, let's go through some of the other counties and we'll circle back to just a couple of people here. Aaron Glenn has to be in the top 5, arguably Limerick's most important player. Grodo Grackon says Tony Kelly, TJ, Grode Hegarty, Diarmaid Byrnes, Kyle Hayes. All-Ireland semi-final taints any Clare players. They did absolutely implode on the day. So let's circle around the houses. Is there any Tipperary player in here at the moment? I'll let you answer this one.
No, I don't think so. Being honest. No, don't think there is, to be fair.
You really are scum, aren't you?
Well, we're talking about top 5. I don't think so, being honest. Is there a Waterford player in the conversation?
Wait now, let's come back to Cathal Barrett though.
Shane, I know, but come on, we're talking about top 5 in the country. Like, you know, is he like, if we're like you couldn't put Cathal Barrett in the head of Sean Finn, like.
At the end of this season now, we'll come back to that.
Okay, that's fair. I've absolutely no problem with that. And you know how highly I rate him anyway. But I couldn't have him. I couldn't have him in the top 5 now. Very divisive character. A very divisive character. If you're not Tipperary, you probably don't like him. If you're Tipperary, you absolutely adore him. But if he's on your team, you'd love him because I just think he's such a kind of fiery defender and he's brilliant on the ball and that as well. I wouldn't have him in this conversation personally. Other Tipperary players, not really. No one really jumping out from a Waterford point of view. If we're looking at top 5, Austin Gleeson deserves to be in a conversation. Daisy Hutchinson deserves to be in a conversation. Stephen Bennett, Tyke de Borca, probably in around there. But again,
if you were to pick one only, I'd be saying Aussie.
To pick one only, I'd be picking Daisy, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, last year in the championship, when Waterford were terrible, Desi was excellent. He definitely was, but so was Aussie. And when they got to the All Ireland final a couple of years ago as well, he was brilliant. So I don't know. I think over the years, his body of work, I'd be giving it to him.
Desi's 3 years at Intercounty. He's been nominated for an All-Star all 3 years. I'd say last year was probably his best year, and he was brilliant with Ballygunner as well. I still don't think he'll be making the top 5 though.
Okay, get your comments in. Let us know, Aussie or Desi. Let's see, Cork. Is there anyone in Cork that you'd look at for this? And I'd be probably saying no.
Mark Coleman's injured. Patrick Horgan is probably coming towards the latter stages of his career. Dara Fitzgibbon on his day is brilliant, but again, a little bit inconsistent.
There's lots of talented players, but there's no one in the top 5. Let's just call it spade a spade.
There's nobody in the top 5 now.
And who else do we have to pick from? So we've gone through all the Munster teams there. And yeah, it's basically Limerick plus Tony Kelly plus maybe Aussie as well, or Desi, depending on that. Let's quickly spin through Leinster. So Wexford, there's some really good players there, but I don't think we're probably going to shortlist anyone here, are we?
No, Lee Chin was brilliant last year and got nominated for an All-Star again, but again, probably he's a bit off. You know, the bar is set pretty high so far. It's a very high bar. You're talking about Galway, and Conor Whelan is mentioned there. Again, he'd be in the conversation. Pádraig Mannion would be in the conversation, I'd say too. Cathal Mannion on his day. Joseph Cooney had a good year last year. But if you're looking at it, I'd say probably Whelan and Pádraig Mannion is the two you'd probably be mentioning. Again, do they come into the top 5?
I put Conor Whelan very close to being there, and like even the way he played, I know it was only the Walsh Cup there recently against Westmeath, but I was like, this guy's moving well. He picked up a bit of an injury, but he'd set up 4 or 5 goal chances from centre forward. So Jay Cav 92 was asking, would we have him in the conversation?
It's gas, you were making a play for Cathal Barrett, yet the player who kept Conor Whelan out of the last 20 minutes of the All-Ireland semi-final completely was Sean Finn, who is, listen, I know you can't have all Limerick lads in there, but you can't have your cake and eat it. Like,
I would be determined to do just that. So okay, so Conor Whelan is the one that we might have in the conversation there. I don't think, like, Dublin have some very good players there, but I'm not quite sure anyone will get in the shortlist, will they?
I don't think so, no. Realistically, and you know, the likes of Crummy and that, some of their better players, he's obviously not available. Donald Burke has the potential to get up to those, you know, close to those heights. Maybe we're going to need to see a bit more. Coming back to Kilkenny, like I would be making a strong play for Adrian Mullen to be in the top 5. I have to say, even if it's at the tail end of the top 5. Yeah, I don't
ahead of Owen Cody, like so. There, like TJ Reid is obviously was nominated for Hurler of the Year, but we are starting to think the transition is happening here, and it's probably one of those two lads who's going to carry the baton. Now they've lost some players this year, so will Kilkenny be as strong? They probably won't be far off it. But if you'd take Mullen out of the two of those anyway. I
would, yeah. I think he's just unbelievably consistent. Very, very consistent. He won the Young Hurler of the Year before Cody won his two. He's an All-Star last year. I just think he's taken on the mantle of leader, really. Owen Cody could step into that, and as captain as well. But I like Mullen's form at Ballyhale. Like, remember against Kilmacud, like he's like a one-man wrecking ball going around the place, and he can literally do everything. Do you know what I mean? He can play. He can drift back into half back line. He can play midfield. He can even play inside if he has to. He can obviously play anywhere in the half forward line too. Yeah, I'd be pushing for him towards the tail end of the 5, probably at 5, I would say. If I had my way.
Okay, and what other teams do we have to talk about? I'm not really sure too many of the other teams beyond that are going to feature, are they?
Not really. When you're looking at the cream of the crop, like you're going to be you're talking a top 5. You're looking at hurlers of the year, All-Stars, multiple All-Stars. Realistically, man of the matches in All-Ireland finals. Yeah, I think we've a decent shortlist assembled.
Morning, lads, says James Daly. TJ, TK, D Burns, G Hegarty, Aaron Gallan. Notable mentions: Conor Whelan, Aussie, Adrian Mullen, Donald Burke, and Adrian Mullen a second time. So really hot on Adrian Mullen there, as
like
we both
JJ O'Kocha. So good they named him twice.
Yeah, Barry Nash, Adrian Mullen is a definite, says PWell74. I've done a bit of a solo run there, and I filled out the page. And I'm interested to see your reaction to this.
I can't have Dermot Burns not in the top 5.
Okay, but obviously I've thrown Aaron Gillane in there, even though we haven't really talked about him that much. I just think of all players, he's so crucial to how they play. Like, they've had wing backs out, they've replaced it. They've taken Keane Lynch out of midfield, they've fixed it. They've taken Keane Lynch out of the team altogether and won an All-Ireland. They've lost their full back, they've changed it. But if you take the tip of the point out of the team, I'm just not sure they're quite the same.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that point. If you're looking at who is the most important Limerick player, like, he's probably the one they could not do without, if you get me. They've been like, imagine say they were able to do without, in inverted commas, Keane Lynch last year, but he's at the apex of the attack. I think it's ridiculous to as much as I was pushing for Adrian Mullen, I do think it's ridiculous to have a top 5 without Dermot Burns in it. So if it's a case where Burns has to go in a 5 instead of Mullen, I'm okay with that. But I don't think we can have a list without the current hurler of the year on it. Again, a guy who's won 3 All-Stars in a row, who hit 30-something points in last year's championship. But I won't disagree with Gillane. I should probably jig it a small bit. I would probably have Burns higher up maybe than 5.
So you're booting Mullen. That's what I'm hearing.
And I was the one stumping for Mullen, but your Gillane point, I won't disagree with you there, because I just think he's crucial to everything that they do.
Okay, so come on now, you want to jig it around. What way do you want to jig it?
We're getting jiggy. There's a lot of messing has to go on here, moving things around there. An awful lot of messing. I think Burns at 5. I think Burns at 5 is even harsh. Let me see. I'd probably have Hegarty at 1, Burns at 2, Gillane at 3, Hayes at 4, and Kelly at 5.
Jeez, that's an amount of jigging.
Yeah, but that's a lot of messing now.
Yeah, okay. Let's see if I can do this smoothly. Did you say Burns at 2?
Burns at 3.
Oh, Burns at 3. And then what way did you say?
Yeah, exactly as it is there now.
Yeah, that's not a bad 5. Jesus, the first 4 are all Limerick, which I suppose stands to reason, doesn't it?
The first 4 are all Limerick, and 3 of them are absolute giants as well.
Yeah, okay. James Daly says, my retired top 5 players: Kieran Kerry, Ken McGrath, Tommy Walsh, Henry Shefflin, Brian Whelan. Mentions to Sean McMahon, John Milan, Brendan Maher, and Ollie and Joe Canning. Kelly at 5, go away, says A. Sully 180. Give us your 5. Give us your 5 in order. We're happy to hear it. Would a goalkeeper make the top 5, e.g. Murphy or Quaid? Jeez, do you know what? Quaid deserves a mention.
He does deserve a mention. We could have went down through the whole Limerick team. I think it's very tight between Quaid and Murphy for who's the best keeper in the country. Yeah, I think it's probably getting closer every year, just because of Quaid's distribution. And I'm fascinated to see what sort of license Murphy is given under Derek Ling now. Will he be allowed, I'd say, to do what he wants to do, as he sees it?
Okay, so just to recap on that, top 5 hurlers heading into the 2023 season: Grode Hegarty, number 1, Aaron Gillane, Dermot Burns, Kyle Hayes, and Tony Kelly. So 4 from Limerick and 1 from Clare. Yeah, I agree. Kelly should be in. Mullen and Port for Kilkenny. Look, we both think he's an excellent player. There's a lot of lads who are probably unlucky to miss out here. We'll circle back to some football. Where were we when we left? We were just about to move on to Cork against Meath. So 19 points to 3-14 for Meath. So that's a really fine win for Colm O'Rourke there. One of 4 men from the Sunday game crew who has, traded in the couch to 5K, except couch to GAA type thing, but went very well. I don't know. You see Shane Walsh's goal for Meath in the second half. The way he turned, went at his man, and took the sensible option of going for a goal rather than the sensible option of a point.
Yeah, it was I looked at their team, and kind of when I saw it named on Friday night, compare it to maybe what we'd seen in the O'Byrne Cup, and you're just thinking a forward line that includes Shane Walsh, Cillian O'Sullivan, Jordan Morris, and you're just thinking, yeah, there's probably scores in this forward line, and they probably started very slowly. I think they were down 6 points to a goal at one stage in the first half, but they really pushed on. And even in spite of Stephen Sherlock kicking 14 points, it's not often you see 14 points kicked in a league game. I think he hit 11 from place balls, 3 from play. But from O'Rourke's point of view, like, this is a game that will help tip them up towards, you'd imagine, the top of the table, because Cork are that mid to upper range team you'd think in Division 2. It's a big win on away side. So yeah, Colin O'Rourke will be delighted with how they started.
Okay, then moving on to Louth, they lost to Clare 13 points to 1-9, and so look, that's a brilliant win for Clare, late winner from Jamie Malone. Derry hammered Limerick 16 points to 4, and you wonder what Dublin are going to do to Limerick. Will it be a bridge too far going up to Division 2? Shane McGuigan, he scored 9 points there. Niall Toner scored 4. In Division 3, Fermanagh beat Longford. We kind of touched on that earlier. Big difference in a week for Paddy Christie and Longford after celebrating the O'Byrne Cup. Great for Kieran Donnelly with his Fermanagh team there. Westmeath lost to Cavan 1-6 to 12 points. That was a repeat of last year's Tailteann Cup final. So disappointing for Desi Dolan on home soil there. You might talk about Offaly's 2-12 to 12 points victory over Antrim.
Yeah, no, delighted with this one from an Offaly point of view. Never easy going up, making that 3 or 4 hour trip, one way even up to Corrigan Park, but they ended up 2-12 to 12 points winners. Essentially, Offaly took their 2 goal chances. I think Antrim had 4 of them, didn't take them. That was the difference. Andy McEntee, by all accounts, wouldn't have been a happy man just seeing some of the chances that they missed. I think they kicked 12 wides as well. But from Liam Kearns' point of view, with the players that they are missing, when it's looking like that Niall McNamee is retired and Jordan Hayes is away on a tour of duty, Owen Rigney's not in there, last year's captain Johnny Maloney's not in there, that's a big win for Offaly, because we probably had the 2 of these down towards the tail end of Division 3. So from an Offaly point of view, having 2 points on the board is huge. Bernard Allen, has one of the great GAA nicknames. Panda is his nickname. Great nickname.
Why?
Don't know, but I'll find out. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think it's a great name though, and he's universally known as Panda. He came on and got a goal when Antrim were trying to push forward to get a goal of their own to stay in it. So delighted from an Offaly point of view. A great win.
Yeah, Ace Ollie 180, he's given us his top 5. Said 1 Grode Hegarty, 2 Tony Kelly, 3 Aaron Gallan, 4 Diarmuid Burns, and 5 Keane Lynch. Can't really argue. I mean, if once Keane Lynch is fit and flying again, he'll be back into our top 5. Conor Laverty kept the good form going for Down. They were good in pre-season. They had a victory down in Semple Stadium against Tipperary. Now, they were miles ahead early on in the game, but for a finish, it was 2-11 to 1-11. And Conor Sweeney picked up a bit of an injury for Tipperary. He's the lead in line, especially with Michael Quinlivan no longer involved. And Shane Brophy from the Nina Guardian tweeted afterwards, some concern within the Tip camp over the severity of the knee injury sustained by Conor Sweeney. Picture will become clearer in the coming days. And Jim McGuinness is, we saw Stephen Poacher tweeting about what a boost it is that Jim McGuinness is involved in the backroom team there. He had been mentioned when they were talking about different setups that might take over the Mourne County towards the tail end of last year. But that's a big boost.
Yeah, it's a big coup, you'd have to say. Don't know what it is. Conor Laverty seems to have serious pulling power. He bring Sean Boylan up to Down when he was with the under-20s as well. McGuinness, I believe, took a session last week, and the role is not going to be like full-time, full-on, because I think he's still involved with the Derry City under-17 soccer team. But it's, by all accounts, seems to be a kind of a once-a-week type thing. And obviously, having an All-Ireland, he'll be the third former All-Ireland winning manager to be involved in a setup this year, and all in an advisory capacity. So you have Pat Gilroy, Jim McGuinness and Sean Boylan. Like, it's mad when you look at the strength of backroom teams now. That's the calibre of individual you need, just helping out, not even steering the ship anymore.
Or do you need it? Or is it all just kind of optics and, we have the most professional setup because you brought in, name X, Y, and Z. Now, maybe I'm wrong and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit, but there's two sides to it, potentially, certainly in some counties. What jersey is Michael wearing? That's the Roscommon one. And as we've said already, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. We also have coaching clinics coming up in the coming weeks. One in Kilworth, County Cork. Colm Spillane, Eddie Brennan and Owen Brissan are going to be giving some great lessons on preparing your team for the 2023 season. And also we're going to have one in Derryloughlin in Tyrone with Conor Gilligan, Conor Gormley, and one other special guest as well. By the way, it's free for under 14s. And if you want to get tickets, go to the video description. Division 4, Carlow and Wicklow drew 2-10 apiece. Also a draw between Wexford and London. So a Matthew Walsh goal 5 minutes into injury time saw London snatch a dramatic draw there. Leitrim beat Waterford and beat him well 3-18 to 0-11. We know that Waterford have been struggling for numbers this year. And Sligo 11 points, Laois 2-11. So that's a good victory for Laois to get their season going.
Definitely is, yeah. Again, disappointing from a Sligo point of view. From a Wicklow point of view as well. Again, there was a kind of a misplaced kick out, I think, by Mark Jackson that led to a goal from Carlow, and that ended up in a draw. It's a big difference there, because I think you tipped Carlow to get promoted from Division 4. I tipped Wicklow as one of the teams to get promoted as well. I think a lot of teams are going to beat each other in Division 4. I don't think anybody's going to win all their games and coast to promotion. Much like all the other divisions, it's absolutely ultra competitive.
So then the All-Ireland champions in ladies football, Meath, they got their first win of the season, a late long-distance strike from fullback Mary-Kate Lynch that delivered a victory there. In the Keogh Cup, Meath are champions, Kildare champions, 224 to 18 points win over Meath. James Burke collected the cup. Down beat Wicklow in the Keogh Cup also, 220 to 19 points. And Down were down to 13 men towards the end of the game there, 14-man Wicklow at the same time. And then the Leinster semi-finals in the schools. You might talk to us about this. Obviously, St. Kieran's beat Closh to Owen 318 to 210. But just off-league schools 120, Good Counsel 27. What did you come away? What was the sort of, the most memorable thing about the game?
Yeah, there was an unbelievable Offaly goal. Who finished it? Dan Burke ended up at man of the match. He got 1-3. Just a beautiful team goal. Brecon Cavanagh, the centre-back, picked up the ball, played a lovely diagonal ball. Shane Rigney kept the ball in by putting his hand out. You know when players show the lines on the ball and show them it's not out? Delivered a lovely hand pass. Jack Screeney delivered a hand pass to Daniel handed it over to Dan Burke, and he finished it beautifully. And Niall Keogh had gotten a brilliant goal for Good Counsel in the first half as well. Just probably Offaly's strength in depth, I would say, and the players that they were able to call on off the bench that I don't think maybe no other team in this competition would be able to call on the selection that they'll have off the bench, maybe apart from Kieran's, who obviously have Niall Shortall, Killian Corcoran, who was tweeting me from Gorham Park the other day with pictures of the Ballyhale boys with the trophy up in the grandstand. So no doubt they're enjoying their week, and they've a Leinster College's A final to look forward to now as well.
It's go to the week time.
It surely is.
Have you been caught on the hop?
No, I have one. I have one ready to go, and I like to look at the lower divisions where possible with some of the league, because they maybe don't get enough attention. But Keith Byrne is a player that, you know, has been absolutely raising the roof for Leitrim in recent seasons. He kicked 1-11 at the weekend. That was out of what I think it was a 3-18 tally that Leitrim had. He was a Tailteann Cup All-Star last year, and you know he's one of the most potent forwards in the country. So from a football, well, listen, I'll give a hurling one as well. I'll give Dan Burke from the Offaly schools. He ended up at 1-3, but the hurling selections, they're small picking this week, shall we say?
Yeah, I give it to James Burke of Kildare. He scored 13 points there in the Keogh Cup. And I'm going to give it to Ben O'Carroll of Roscommon. Obviously, you're wearing the Roscommon colours there, but I thought he was excellent and scored that late goal as well. So that's about the size and shape and the whole lot of it. Brought to you again by OurGame.com. Promo code OurGame. You got 15% off, although there is 20% off till the end of the month. And another point to make is if you want the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. There's also an awful lot of exclusive material there, post videos and so on and so forth. Michael, we'll do it again later in the week.
Cheers, fellow.